Hi, I'm Jonathan Yeo, founder of the Potential Space, and I'm so happy to be a part of the Congreso de Comunicación Accesible e Inclusiva. I created the Potential Space to help organizations build inclusive cultures and develop inclusive leaders. Based on what I've learned from doing this work at Apple and in the tech industry for the last 10 years, and before that in education, in marketing, and in creative industries. Today I'm going to talk about both those topics, what makes an inclusive culture and what makes an inclusive leader. I hope you'll take away some ideas you can use to help drive inclusion in your organization and things you can do personally to be that inclusive leader. So let's start with inclusive cultures. We're going to talk about elements that make up an inclusive culture and then get you thinking about how inclusive your organization is and where you have the most opportunities to improve it. That's important because I want to be realistic. Organizations don't suddenly become inclusive overnight or because of one program or focus. What you do as an organization to promote inclusion depends a lot on where you are now, where you want to be, and what commitment there is to change and improve. And that's commitment from leadership and commitment over time. So let's explore. There are four key things that we often see in inclusive cultures or organizations that are really striving for more inclusion. These organizations demonstrate connection, curiosity, change, and commitment. Let's explore each of those, starting with connection. This is where an organization understands and supports building connections beyond just functional relationships. They support ways for employees to get to know other employees that they don't work with. And for those that do work together, they recognize that relationships need to be built around broader topics than just the work itself. So an organization that supports connection could be one that has one or more of the following. First, strong and supported employee community groups, also called employee resource groups or affinity groups. Second, investment in opportunities to build connections, such as off-site team meetings, social events, or an internal social platform, especially one that shares employee stories and profiles. And the organization should have a learning and development curricula that includes a focus on communication skills, authenticity, and building trust. So that's connection. Let's look at curiosity. Curious organizations recognize that the work of inclusion is never done. It's an ongoing goal. No one solves inclusion. We just keep working to improve it. And that takes curiosity. So what does that curiosity look like in an organization truly committed to inclusion? Well, a starting point for curiosity could be regularly surveying employees on their experience with particular attention to questions about their sense of belonging. I'll note here that just having those surveys doesn't necessarily mean true curiosity. It's the organizations that really look at the results of those surveys to find out what to focus on next. It's like saying, yes, we see our scores on belonging have improved overall, which is great, but where is our next opportunity? Where can we do better? What communities in our organization are lagging behind? It's continually asking those questions. Curious organizations also continually review their values, their mission statements, and their culture, and are willing to challenge those. And curious organizations are always listening, not just once a year when they run a survey, but they provide genuine and safe avenues for employees to be heard, and they take those inputs seriously. And next, change. We don't become more inclusive without change. Inclusive organizations are always ready to make change, to evolve, and to transform. It's not enough just to be curious or just to listen. It has to lead to meaningful change. And it's ongoing. Often we think of change in organizations as a particular process or project, one that moves us from A to B. But like with curiosity and connection, the work is never done, and so change must be ongoing. Organizations that lean into continuous change and improvement, especially when it comes to inclusion, are vocal and transparent about it. They're not afraid to talk about where they've been, where they're headed, and what they're going to do to get there. Of course, change takes action, not just words, but action. And that leads us to commitment. In some ways, this is the real marker of an inclusive organization, one that demonstrates commitment to all that we've just talked about. So commitment to a culture that drives connections, commitment to curiosity and openness, commitment to make change in service of what is being learned and discovered. And here's where I would come back to words versus actions. Aspirational words have to be matched by the day-to-day experiences of employees, and those are the result of actions. But words are important. How the organization talks to its employees about inclusion is a key indicator of how committed it is. And then those employees will assess the truth of those words by looking for the actions that back them up. The best commitments I see from inclusive organizations are the transparent ones, the ones where they talk about what they're doing well and what they need to improve on and what their plans are to do that. So let me give you a moment here to reflect on your organization and just do a quick assessment of how inclusive you think it is. For each category of connection, curiosity, change, and commitment, just jot down a rating from 1 to 5 for your organization as we go through each one. 1 being less inclusive and 5 being very inclusive. So let's start with connections. So how much does your organization support connections? Is it a place where connections are only when necessary for the work? Or does the organization provide some opportunities to help employees connect? Or does it actively encourage both broad and deep connections at work? Where do you see your organization on this scale of fostering connection? Okay, and next, how curious is your organization about its people and the way it works? Is it a place where leadership knows best, where no one wants to mess with the recipe? Or does the organization ask for input and feedback from time to time? Or is it an organization that is comfortable with continuous exploration of how it works and how it could be better? How does your organization rate on curiosity? Next, how willing is your organization to make continuous changes? Is your organizational culture exactly the same as last year? Have there been some initiatives to change and improve? Or is yours an organization who thrives on continuous improvements and evolution? How do you rate your organization on change? And finally, how committed is your organization to inclusion in both words and actions? Do you see little to no evidence of commitment? Are there some examples of words and actions you can think of? Or can you say that your organization has a genuine commitment to inclusion and you can see the impacts of it? Where do you see your organization in terms of commitment? So the goal here is not to add up a score, but simply to look for where your organization may have the most opportunity to build inclusion. So for example, if you scored your organization a 3 on curiosity, but a 1 on change, then focusing on embracing change may be the most impactful for building inclusion in your organization and for your employees. Have a look at your scores and see what that key opportunity is for your organization. Is it connection, curiosity, change, or is it commitment? So let's come back to the model. It's probably obvious to you now why this is a jigsaw. These pieces are highly interconnected. They inform and support each other. Connections can both satisfy and drive curiosity, which in turn should motivate change, which needs commitment to achieve. And commitment to inclusion necessitates connections. And so an inclusive culture grows. So that's at the organizational level. But what about at the level of individual leadership? And what's the relationship between the two? Well, at its simplest, it's a virtuous cycle. Inclusive cultures provide the foundation to develop and encourage inclusive leaders. And at the same time, inclusive leaders set the example for and contribute to inclusive cultures. And so they should build on one another. So to think about what it means to be an inclusive leader, we're going to use the same concepts, but we're going to adapt the language just slightly and for a specific reason. So instead of what an inclusive culture has, we're going to look at what inclusive leaders do. Inclusive leaders connect, they use curiosity to learn, they change themselves and the organization, and they commit to inclusive behaviors. The most important part of this is that inclusive leaders act. They take actions every day that drive, build, and improve inclusion. So let's look at those 4 actions individually. As an inclusive leader, you connect. Connect with the individuals on your team, not just about deliverables and status updates, but about how they're doing and feeling. You connect with difference, and by that I mean you don't take the easy connection opportunities. You connect with those different to you, with different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. You also connect people together. As a leader, you usually have broader networks, and you should be building bridges across those networks, helping others make connections. And the other way leaders connect is through vulnerability. Being authentic, being open and sharing who you are. You'll connect by doing that, and you'll make it safe for others as well. Inclusive leaders also learn. You're always learning about yourself through reflection, feedback, and exploration, building self-awareness. You learn about your team, not just when you first meet them, but consistently over time, always looking to know more about them, what they care about, what motivates them, what's going on for them right now. And apply that to your boss as well. It's just as important as learning about your team. And learn new perspectives whenever you can, whether it's just looking up something on the internet that's new to you, or making the effort to search someone out and learn from their experiences or expertise. An inclusive leader is a lifelong learner. And if you're an inclusive leader, you take what you've learned and you change. You change your behaviors to make sure you're open and unbiased. You use your leadership and influence to change your team's culture, setting expectations for their behaviors and setting the example. You change your words. If you have a habit of using language that could exclude someone, and you change processes and procedures that you're in control of to remove any potential bias or exclusion they may have. And then you commit. Commit to being the example for others, for your team, for your peers, and your leaders. Commit to mentoring someone who could benefit from your experience, your connections, your engagement with them. Commit to sponsoring. That's using your influence and reputation to champion someone else, to help raise their profile and move their career forward. And commit to the learning of others by creating environments and opportunities for others to learn and grow themselves. So as I said, inclusive leaders take action by doing these things every day. Let me share a few examples of what that might look like for you. So to connect, think of a personal story you could share, something that might let people in a little more to your world, make it safe for them to share more of theirs. I've talked with many leaders about this. Often they're reluctant or they think they have to share some dramatic revelation about themselves. It's not that, it's just opening the curtain a little more, letting a little more light in on who you are, what's important to you. Another great way to connect is to introduce people across your organization that you think could learn from each other's experiences or journeys. To learn, take a self-assessment. You've probably done one at work or online. Some are, of course, better than others, but whether you agree with the profile or not, it's usually a valuable exercise in self-reflection and building self-awareness. Self-awareness is foundational to then developing your awareness of others. And to learn more about others, simply ask them what means the most to them. They might be surprised by the question, but I guarantee you'll learn something new from their answer. And to change, create some new meeting rules for your team. With so many of our meetings virtual at the moment, it actually can help with inclusion. If everyone being remote levels the field and provides additional ways to participate, like through chat. But there are disadvantages too. For example, content you share in a virtual meeting may not be easily read or interpreted by accessibility devices such as screen readers. Send any content out beforehand if that helps people absorb and be ready to respond. And change your language if you need to. Are you someone that always uses sports metaphors, but not all your team are sports fans? Do you use any expressions that seemed okay 10 years ago, but are not now? Do you say, hey guys, even though it's a mixed gender group? Why not hey team or hey everyone? Change those expressions to something inclusive. And some simple ways to commit. Share your learning. Don't keep it to yourself. If you learned something that made you change your behavior, then tell others about it. It shows that vulnerability we talked about. It encourages others to learn and change too. And offer to be a mentor to someone. If you can't think of someone straight away you could mentor, ask your colleagues if they know someone who could benefit from your mentorship. And inevitably, when you mentor someone, you learn from them too. So those are some practical examples of actions you can take. Things you can do to connect, learn, change, and commit. Things you can do to be an inclusive leader. And as you do that, you'll contribute to an inclusive culture and keep that virtuous cycle going. So to sum up today's session, we looked at the elements of an inclusive culture, and you thought about where your organization might have the most opportunity to improve. And then we looked at that in terms of the actions individual leaders can take to be more inclusive themselves. And of course, then to contribute to that virtuous cycle, building inclusive cultures through individual inclusive actions. And those more inclusive cultures then enabling leaders to become more inclusive themselves. I called my company The Potential Space not just to be hopeful, but because I've seen again and again the real change that can happen when people commit to realizing potential. The potential of individuals and the potential of organizations. It's already clear from your participation today that you're curious, you're hungry to learn, you want to make change, and you want to build inclusion for others. You want to achieve the potential that you see. I hope you have some ideas to take away today to do that. If you're looking for ways to go further, visit thepotential.space or follow us on Instagram or Twitter. I'd love to stay connected. Thanks so much for your time today and for your commitment to inclusion.